What are Canadians responding to? The latest numbers from Abacus Data show a 20-point lead for the Conservatives among committed voters, with Pierre Poilievre's party at 42%, as you can see there, to Justin Trudeau's Liberals at 22%, just 3 points ahead of the NDP, who are sitting at 19%. Interestingly, the numbers are nearly identical when broken down between men and women. Here to crunch those numbers and other things they're seeing in the field are two of this country's top pollsters. David Coletto is the founder, chair, and CEO of Abacus Data, and Shachi Kurl is the president of the Angus Reid Institute. Hi, guys. Great to see you both. David, I'll start with you in your kind of top-line numbers. We, the three of us, I think the last time we met, had been wondering if the impending rate cut, as small as it is, psychologically could have an impact politically. It looks like your numbers are showing us that it so far has not.
It hasn't yet, if it is going to have that effect. I mean, we look at a number of things. As you said, the Conservatives still ahead by 20 points. The government's approval rating hasn't moved all that much. Perhaps the most important number in my mind to watch is whether Canadians feel that the direction of the country is moving in the right direction. Maybe, an interest rate cut could be a signal for that. We don't see much change at all there. So it could change. Maybe we need a few more cuts in order for people to really feel that we've turned the corner and things are going to get better. But so far, there doesn't appear to be any evidence in our most recent survey that the Liberals are benefiting from this rate cut, or that the rate cut is making the country less grumpy than it's been for over a year now.
Shachi, what are you finding in the field? Do you have that same sense of stagnation?
I think you're going to see numbers in a couple of days, Vassy and David, that will align very much with what David's numbers are showing us, really concerning numbers for the Liberals continuing to show that. He talked about, that's the what, and David talked about one part of the why. The other part of the why is this lack of traction and if anything, almost a backlash we're seeing as a result of the announcement around the capital gains tax hike. And I think it's not going too far to say that what we're going to see once again are the impacts of a muddled communication from the Liberal government on this particular tax. We've heard Ottawa say, we've heard Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland say, look, very, very few Canadians are going to be affected by this tax. This tax is something that they hope is going to help them get a bump or some gains with younger voters. And I am looking at numbers that you're going to be seeing very soon that are showing not only, again, are we seeing a lack of traction among the voters that they need so very desperately to come back to them, but confusion as to who may be affected, who is affected, who thinks they're going to be paying more in income tax, regardless of whether they are or not. So either the Liberals are not coming entirely clean about exactly how many Canadians are going to be affected by this, but also you've got a significant segment who think that they will be affected, whether or not they are. Either way, it continues to spell trouble for the Liberals.
It's interesting because prior to the capital gains story becoming the headline of the budget, David, we were speaking for weeks about the preamble to the introduction of the budget, the way in which the government was kind of, putting all their effort into, the Liberals in particular, in trying to get as much bang for their buck as they could out of the budget. And it was all geared towards a younger generation, right? That they identified as being unfairly, or sort of having an unfair go of things. What is your demographic breakdown showing you about the traction or lack thereof for the Liberals there?
We had seen a few weeks ago, perhaps, the Liberals making some gains among the youngest cohort, the 18 to 29 group. That's disappeared in the most recent survey. They're now in third place. The NDP might have gained a little bit, but the Conservatives are ahead across all age groups. There's no gender gap in our polling anymore. Women are as likely to vote Conservative as men are now. And so their efforts to speak to that younger generation, talk about fairness for every generation, doesn't seem to have made any difference. And I think it's really interesting, in talking about capital gains and how the government has tried to frame this as being, taking on, representing the little guy, taking on the rich, making them pay a little bit more than their fair share. It's lost completely the point and the reason we're doing this, which is to pay for housing. So we went from it being the housing budget, an issue that is far more likely to be ranked as a top issue by Canadians, and particularly young Canadians, then questions around inequality. And so what I think the government's trying to do, and it's a really hard thing for a government that doesn't have a lot of goodwill left with the public, is raise an issue that's not high up on the agenda and reframe it in one that they are seen as the best at doing. And in our survey that we just completed, when you ask people who care about poverty and inequality as a top issue, which ranks about in the middle of all the issues we test, the Liberals come third when we ask then people, who do you think is best to handle that issue, behind the New Democrats and even the Conservatives. So they're trying to do a really hard thing, and that's, convince people that not only is this an issue that we need to tackle, but that the Liberals are the best able to do it.
We're heading, Shachi, into the summer barbecue season. Last summer is when kind of things really started to switch. The Conservatives, almost since the fall, have maintained this very wide, at times incredibly wide, just sometimes very sort of wide lead. But it's been sustained, I think it's fair to say, over a genuine period of time. Heading into the summer, how hard is it, historically speaking, do you think, to maintain that momentum?
It really depends on what the Liberals are able to say or not say on the circuit. The Conservatives have done a very good job of saying as little as possible. We actually have no idea the level of policy work that they're doing in background. As if you're sitting on a 20-point lead, you're starting to hopefully plan for, okay, what is a Conservative government going to look like? Not only are we not hearing any specifics, or we're hearing very few specifics on that front. From a political standpoint, it's understandable. You don't want to show your cards too soon. But, you do wonder, like, who's in the policy shop? Who's coming on board in order to prepare for what may presumably be, if these numbers hold, a transition and a change in government? So I think these are the questions that the Liberals, may want to start asking in terms of trying to put something, anything, to the Conservatives to get them onto the defensive. And just to circle back on the housing issue, Vassy, one of the things that I think has been missed in what the Liberals are trying to sell, which is again going to come back to be a challenge for them, is that so much generational wealth in this country has been accumulated through the accumulation or even just the rise in value of real estate. So if you are a 60 or 70 or even 50 plus parent looking to help your kids out by selling a piece of property in order to give them that lift into the housing market, this is something that if you're young and if you're paying attention, you're going to recognize, well, now my parents may be paying a higher schwack of funding as a result, a higher level of tax as a result of this change, and ultimately I may have less in my wallet to go into the housing market to look for. So, when we talk about generational fairness, when we talk about, equity through the generations, I think it's important to remember, and it's important for government to remember and acknowledge that these generations are often interconnected, like they're parents and kids, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting because heading into the budget, I remember the Liberals telling me behind the scenes, they were kind of banking on the idea that they target the generation that is most at a disadvantage right now, and they will get, politically an advantage with their parents and their grandparents because they're so worried about their kids, but it doesn't necessarily seem to have borne out that way. I've just got a few seconds left. A very quick comment from each of you, I think, on the big elephant in the room heading into the summer. That is Justin Trudeau's leadership. Quick final comment from you, David, and then Shachi.
Well, I say let's wait to see what happens in Toronto St. Paul on Monday and then come back to that question. If the Liberals, either lose or that's a really close race, I think more and more of us and maybe even a number of Liberal MPs will be more publicly questioning whether the Prime Minister can take the party where it needs to go over the next few months.
Shachi?
I'm not trying to be cute, but stay tuned. I don't want to say anything yet.
Okay, we shall wait. We'll convene again after that by-election. Thanks, everyone. David Coletto and Shachi Kurl.